All right, so first, what is a CV? What is a resume? What's the difference? I think a lot of us know what a resume is. A lot of us have probably had jobs or, within our educational history, if you have that you've had to use a resume for. So a lot of us are familiar with that, but sometimes we get handed this request for a CV and we're like, what is that? I definitely felt that way the first time I was asked for a CV. So we're here to demystify that tonight. A CV basically is everything. Well, technically it's everything. It stands for curriculum vitae, or the course of my life in Latin. And it's a quote unquote comprehensive overview of information relevant to your working life. And I put comprehensive in quotes because it's not everything. I worked at Bath and Body Works for 8 months in 2008. And I'm not going to put that on my resume or on my CV, right? Because it's not relevant to who I am now and what I do now, right? So it's comprehensive, but not comprehensive. You're not going to put everything that's not relevant. You're just going to put all the stuff that's relevant to who you are now and to the position that you are applying to. But this can be a long list of relevant things. So not quite comprehensive, but mostly. It's generally used for like academic context, sometimes for grant opportunities in the arts, and also for some employment opportunities in the arts outside of academic realms. You'll be asked for a CV. So it's good to know what it is, to have one on hand for those reasons. And it's good to have on hand because it is comprehensive for like bookkeeping purposes. So you can keep track of everything that you've done. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. And like I said, this can be long. CVs start at 3 pages, and I would set an upper limit roughly at 10 pages, although that may not be true for all of you, but I would say 3 to 10 pages is kind of where you're at. I often see them, in like the 5-6 range. That's not unusual at all, depending on how long your career has been. A resume, on the other hand, is usually like 1 to 4 pages. So there's a little bit of overlap there in length. But for some of you, and some of you are probably very aware, especially if you are a performing artist, that it's more on the 1-page side of things that you need to restrict yourself when somebody asks for a resume. And we'll talk about that as we go through the individual domains here in a minute. But because it's shorter, this is a document that whoever you're submitting it to knows is incomplete. It's tailored to reflect what they're asking for and to reflect your specific expertise in the area that they're asking for. So you may not list, so like if you're a visual artist, for instance, you might not list every single exhibition you've ever done. You might instead have a selected exhibitions category that just highlights some of the ones that you're most proud of. If you are an actor who also directs, who also does some screenwriting on the side, but you're applying for something that's acting related, you might leave off some of the directing and screenwriting credits because you're tailoring it to what you're going for right now. So you might have a variety of resumes ready to go, or you might just cut down from that CV and create them specifically for each thing you need it for. A resume is typically, like I sort of have insinuated, expected for performance contexts. You're not a lot of times going to be asked for a CV. If you're writing it for a performance context, it's almost always a resume. For commercial or nonprofit galleries, you'll often be asked for a resume. Exhibition opportunities, some residency and grant applications, and let me get rid of this really quick, and some public art proposals, so things like that. So some grant applications will ask for a resume, some for a CV. So you just have to keep an eye out for what they're asking for there. All right, so in sum, I like to say a CV can be long. So if someone asks you for a CV and you submit something that's 5 pages, that's okay. They're asking for a CV knowing I might get a very long document in response. If they ask you for a resume, they're going to know that what you're sending them is not complete. So don't, I know it's hard to eliminate things off of our resume sometimes to make it fit the length requirement, but know that the person on the other end, if they're asking for a short resume, they know that you've had to cut things out. So they know that you're excluding things. The audiences are slightly different, although there is some overlap there. The length, there's some overlap in the length, but CVs are generally much longer. And then a CV is quote unquote comprehensive, but only comprehensive as is relevant. And a resume is abbreviated and tailored to whatever you're applying for. Now, there is something that you might get asked for, which is a short CV. And I think I took this out. But a short CV, if you do get asked for a short CV, I usually like to say that that's anywhere from 3 to 4 pages. So like somewhere in the happy medium. And you might abbreviate some of the sections like you would for a where you trim it down to a selected section if you need to, if you go beyond 4 pages and you need to trim it down. And you might eliminate some categories that aren't specifically relevant to the job or the opportunity at hand. A biography, so for some of y'all that haven't gone to some of the webinars, a biography is just introducing your audience to who you are very dryly most of the time. And an artist statement is a little bit more creative, and you are introducing the audience to your art, your how, your what, and your why of your art. A CV and a resume is the driest of all of these documents, and probably the driest document you're going to be submitting as part of a portfolio or, as part of an application. It is not a creative endeavor by any means, and we'll get into that here in a minute. This is something that's skimmable, and both of them are organized into categories, sometimes subcategories, and each category or subcategory has about 2 to 10 entries. So I'll show you what that looks like. So this is an excerpt from a CV. You can see here, this is what I'm going to call a category. It could also be called a section. These aren't hard and fast terms. So here you see it's underlined and bolded. This is a category in a CV, and it's got 3 entries. So here's the first of 3 entries. And here, so it's got the title of the person's role, and where they did it, and then the date. And then there's also a description here. So these are the terms I'm going to be using tonight. So I wanted to sort of show you what I'm talking about so it doesn't get confusing. We're going to be talking a lot about categories, a lot about categories and what categories to include. Descriptions aren't always necessary. A lot of times they're not necessary. Let's say in your exhibition list, that's part of your artist CV, your artist resume or something like that, or your performance history for you performing artists, or your publications may not need descriptions. Publications might, because you might need a little synopsis or something like that. But for performance history and exhibition history, those sorts of things don't usually need a description. Teaching roles do. Administrative roles usually do, because you're having to say what duties you have in that role because it's not immediately obvious. So you sort of have to judge for yourself, or have me help you judge that in a one-on-one over the next couple of weeks, if it needs a description or not, if it's not obvious from the title.